Welcome to another episode of Beyond Backlog, and I'm Ashwin. And today we have a very special guest, Sherry Jindal, a product manager who's based in Spain. And I have collaborated with Sherry in the past, and I'm excited to dive into her experiences navigating the product landscape. We'll explore what it's like to be a product manager in Spain or Europe, and how the market differs from other regions, and what the product managers can learn from her journey. So it's great seeing you again, Sherry, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you so much for inviting me and having collaborated before with you. This is a great experience to collaborate with you on your series Beyond Backlog, and congratulations for this.
Thank you, Sherry. And it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
So to kick off, like I just wanted to ask, like, how did you, you're from India, and how did you land up in Spain as a product manager?
Good question. It's nice that you asked me. I landed up in Spain by a very chance. Let's say it was a very silly chance. It goes back to 2019 when I went for a holiday from India to Spain. And I had it in my mind that I would love to travel again here. And to be honest, there was no product framework or any type of decision making which was applied when I came here. And what happened was that when in 2019 I came for the holiday, I also realized that Europe as a region has a lot of influx of product managers, people from technology, people from CRO, engineering into Europe from India. And basically, it was because Europe as a economy, as region was growing in terms of startups, and there was a skill gap which Indian or let's say Asian engineering and product managers were filling in. And a lot of my friends were moving, so I decided to try myself because I liked going for a holiday in Spain, and that's how all this ended up in me applying and taking a chance, and that's how I landed up here. Now, to your second question as to why product. When I was working in India, my last role from 18 to 20, 2018 to 20, was roughly into product. It was on Dell website in the cart and checkout and other product pages, improving the experience. So it was a natural skill gap which my experience provided. And that's how, I just encashed on it. So yeah, that's how I ended.
Thanks for that, Sherry. I think we've like experienced Spain through Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, and thanks to you also saying that, and it's great. So on to my next question, Sherry. Like in the product landscape, right? Like in the startup and the tech scene, how would you
Right.
describe the product management culture in Spain compared to other regions like India, especially in top places like Bengaluru, Hyderabad, Chennai, and all those places?
Okay. Firstly, I would say that because, as I already mentioned, my experience in product was just 1.5 years in India. To be honest, there will be a lot of more experienced people out there who can give this answer much better than me. But whatever I have experienced, I just come from that experience and I can let you know. From the comparison which I can do can only be Bangalore and Barcelona because these are the two cities, cultures I have experienced, right? And I would say that product learnings, I won't say it is very different in the two places. The idea is that when you are building the product, there is a lot of research which goes into what users want, what market needs are, and how you can be competitive enough in your particular landscape. So those learnings more or less remain the same. I would honestly say that product as field depends a lot on a company and what type of culture you are in. For example, just to mention, some of the companies have a very strong product culture where decision making is more bottom to top, where people are told to think of the ideas, navigate themselves, make their roadmaps, or probably bring in the potential ideas to talk to stakeholders, where a lot of analysis, insights, industry trends are taken into account, just like how it goes in India. But then there are also a lot of cultures where decision making is more top down, where a lot of product thinking and everything is already done. but then you go ahead and kind of execute that roadmap in a very nice fashion. So I would say it has to do more on terms of the company and the culture you are in, but overall the learnings, whatever approach, from my limited experience I have seen, is pretty much the same in both the places.
So, I think
Hmm.
I'm just following up on this question, right?
Of course.
Yes, Bangalore has a lot of startup-based scenarios, whereas in like places where I'm from, Chennai, more of a SaaS-based. Yes, we have startups, but not as much as aggressive as Bangalore. But you also mean that it also depends on the company's culture, and
Right.
the startups tend to be more of that kind of culture where it's not top to bottom, but also like from whichever angle it is based from, right? Like so that like we might get more outcome based rather than feature based.
That is true. I think you have kind of summarized it very well, because you have more leeway to experiment, more leeway to still find a right product market fit.
Awesome. Okay, Sherry. So moving on to my next question is like, say, of course, you're working in a global product
Hmm.
landscape, we might say that. So when we are building, right, when we are building a global product, how is it building global needs? Or if you are building local products, how does it, is it building the local needs as well?
That's an interesting question. So I would say it really, really depends on what type of product and what type of industry we are talking about. Okay. And I can give you one example from where I worked previously. So I was working in L&D, learning and development industry, where we had more products which were globally accepted. And it boiled down to the fact that the learning levels and the scales, for example, if you have a language learning, the content and levels across the world remains the same, which is your CFR scale, right? So imagine if I am working on a product which has to do with reporting. Basically, I am using a product where I am reporting the needs of an L&D industry, of how their users are doing and what metrics an organization wants to capture. So there is, at a basic level, some things which will be global, because some things remain the same, right? There will be things like, okay, how much your learners have progressed, how much active time they have, those things remain the same. But then there are certain nuances which I found out when I was working on this product. For example, France had a legal need to report on something very specific, which was around cost, versus US didn't have that need to do, right? So I would say that at the end, it really depends on the product and the industry you are in. And depending on that product, there will be a certain set of basic product which caters to everything. And then there are small nuances and touches which you have to customize according to which region or which client you are catering to. So that really boils down to that fact. And I think, to be honest, it's true with any B2B product which you use at the end of the day. I hope
Yeah,
that answers your
yeah,
question.
yeah, I guess what we are trying to get and you're trying to say is we should customize for each market to compete better and keep
Hmm.
the product simple and global to reach more users. It depends on whichever market we are in.
Yes, I think, see, now this is more, let's say, not a product question, but more a business
Mm.
question, right? In a
Yeah,
way, I think of it, it will be more like, okay, I have a global product where I don't want to customize and reach out to every set of consumers, but I want to reach out to big market at a very high level scale, versus I want to penetrate into a particular market and I want to customize all the needs of that market. So then your approach differs, right? But yes, at the end, definitely it boils down to which region or which country you want to work in and what type of needs you have around it.
got it. So moving on to our next question, Sherry, so since you've been in Spain for some time, what are the for the trends and opportunities? What industry or product categories are booming in Spain that you have felt right now?
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be Spain, like any other places in Europe as well. What are
I
the
see your question.
yeah.
Okay. Um, This is the difference which I have found from the time I have moved here. That is, let's say 2022, beginning of 2022. And I'm not sure how Indian landscape has now evolved in this sector. But what I found very different in Europe as a market was that there is a lot of focus on carbon neutrality, sustainability, and carbon emissions. Like, let's say there are a lot of startups. Of course, now AI has taken the boom, and AI is like an emerging trend across the world when it comes to startups, right? That is by far a given thing. But one thing which I found very specific in EU was that there are a lot of companies which are into sustainability, carbon neutrality. For example, there are companies who make products which help large scale companies to see how much their carbon emissions are and where they can reduce their carbon footprint, right? That is one such example. Second example is there are companies who are doing their normal work, for example, a transport company, right? Without naming any company, but now they are venturing into something called multimodal transport, but from the angle of reducing carbon emission. In the same way, there are a lot of e-commerce companies which are launching products which are related to carbon friendly packaging, less, let's say, shipping is a longer, which reduces the carbon footprint. So there is a lot of clear focus in terms of digital products being carbon neutral. And interestingly, even forget about digital products, even the products which we use day to day, for example, our cosmetics or our food, there is a lot of focus on carbon neutrality and sustainability in Europe in general, especially Germany for that matter is like one of the most brilliant examples in terms of carbon neutrality. So this is something which I found really interesting, and also the fact that people really care about it. It is not something which is a fad, but yeah, people really are conscious about it and they try to reduce their carbon footprint by using such products. It's a big market out here.
So I have a follow-up question, like say,
Of course.
being an Indian, right? Like we have never seen these kind of use cases here. So when we come there, hope we don't laugh it off. But the other thing is, so I get that as a product manager, if I'm coming to, Spain or any other place in Europe, I should make sure that we have also some of the use cases pertaining to making sure that, we are reducing our carbon footprint, irrespective
Correct.
of the domain that we are working in, right? Like, say, if
Makes
it's
sense.
a booking site, those kind of things, and the edtech sites that
Hmm.
we have also worked on, maybe some other
Correct.
uses cases which may
Right.
pertain to it as well.
Right.
So, so is it like, do we have to prepare for that to make sure that we are prepared for it? Like, are there certain, trainings or something that some people would have to know about it, or they just have to, know at a certain point of a glance? Like, all right, I know that I have to do it, but, or
Okay.
do they,
Understood.
you know,
I think I get your point. I get your question. If I have to reframe your question is more around, is there any specific training which is given for it, or is it something which is inherent in people and they just have to do it? Right? That's way your
yeah.
question, correct? I think it is a cultural thing, right? For example, let's say, hypothetically speaking, you tomorrow start working in a European travel company. Okay, let's say. The idea is that because it is culturally important in the entire ecosystem to make sure that our whole idea about business is about sustainability and reducing carbon footprint, then eventually that line of thought will be built into you, right? That's one aspect, that it will obviously be built into you because company is making sure that you are conscious about it. Now, how you make it into decision making is basically around reading the regulations, correct? So there are a lot of these EU
Mm.
regulations which talk about reducing carbon footprint by 2030, how you can do it. So incorporating those legal frameworks into your product and decision making when you are building the feature automatically ensures both the things are covered, your knowledge and your motivation. So I hope that helps in giving you the answer on, is it something which you develop? But I think it's the idea that once you are into that culture, you will inherently become conscious of it and you will yourself start thinking around those lines, correct? That's how it obviously works.
And read the GDPR regulations properly.
Yes, of course. I think if you
Yeah.
remember when we worked together, right, in L&D space, there was a lot of conscious effort on building our products, our accessibility guidelines, which meet
Yeah.
accessibility guidelines, right? So imagine,
That's
yeah, if it was Indian market, it would not have been right now a big deal. That doesn't mean that we should not make our products as accessibility guidelines. But the idea is that in Europe, if you remember, there was a particular focus on having our reports around that, having our experience around that, correct? So this is something
yeah.
which is inherent here. So yeah, that is like one of the answers or one of the examples which comes into my mind. So
All right. So, moving on, Sherry, so you must have seen right now, right, every, profession is going through some reimagination, right? We have a lot of AI things going on and all these things
of
as well.
course.
So, what do you think about, do you see the product management role evolving in the European landscape?
Okay, it's a little tough question to answer because, again, it is kind of something which is very industry, company, and culture dependent. Okay. Now, what I know from a lot of people whom I talk to these days, AI is definitely something which has to be used in their day to day work because it is something which has become a part of our lives, right? There is no doubt about it that we all use AI in one or the other ways in our lives these days, right? Be it just asking a simple question to, let's say, making a prototype, right? It depends on how much experience you have and how much you want to use it. We all are using it. But I still feel that there are a lot of things which AI can definitely help us in doing, right? For example, it can be a bane for PMs where you have to, let's say, synthesize your data, or let's say you have to ask particular questions around a particular technology, or maybe let's say you have already something and you want it to write a PRD in a proper fashion, or it could be building a prototype, right? So these are good use cases where, as a product manager, or let's say right now I'm working in the CRO role, I can use it. Okay. But I still believe that the whole idea of what a customer wants and how those needs have to be thought through at a product level still requires a person to churn it and deal it through the navigate it through, because this is something which, no matter what the best quality model is, you still require a human being to be that empathetic enough to understand the user and competitive landscape and build the products. So I would say the thinking part and the part where you have to put your ideas and thoughts into a particular framework of product requires a product manager, and that's where product manager adds the value. But yes, day to day task of planning, execution, making your life simple around data analysis, etc., of course you can use AI, and I'm pretty sure all the PMs are these days using AI to get through with those things. So yeah, I would say that product management, sorry, AI definitely is evolving, and product management as a space is also evolving, but there are some nitty gritties as a product manager which now I see has a better chance to thrive as compared to earlier times. So I would rather say it as a boon, because these are the qualities which a good product manager has, and they are going to thrive more because all the other things AI can take care of. If you understand what I'm trying to say here, right? The
That's
execution and all the things. Yeah.
so onto this thing. I think I'm moving a bit forward, but just
Mm-hmm.
bear with me. You're saying it has helped us in many ways rather than it's a boon rather than a pain. So I might also relate to it in certain spaces, most of product managers, we are not that much of tech oriented, or of course we are tech oriented. What I meant was like tech savvy, or not that deep in technology, right? Like when we are working with
Right.
different kind of people like Python or something like that, we might not be able to
Right.
know how long it will take. But I think with these AI tools and everything, since we have a lot of things working for us right now, like Bolt and a lot of things, they might be able to let us know how long it will take to, and it also help us to build a small MVP in a shorter time, so that I think
Of
we
course.
might be able to know, how faster would we be able to get the result.
And that's exactly the point, that there are a lot of
Yeah.
things where we were, let's say, evaluated, which may not be the most necessary or the most important of the skill, right? For example, when
Mhm.
we work, there are different skills on which we are evaluated, and one of the skill is execution, or let's say how you plan things, right? Which may not be a forte of some product managers, let's say, right? Which could be very good forte of others, but may not be good forte of some product managers. But now, as you said, AI can help you in planning and executing some things faster, which gives you time and space to think about what problems to solve
Yeah.
and things make important more. Because that's what product managers always complain, right? We have so much time for execution that we don't get time for thinking. Now you have time for thinking because some of the execution parts can be taken care of. So, yeah, I would say it's a boon. But yeah.
So, tagging with the last question, so what are your favorite AI tools you've used in your day-to-day work or in
Okay,
general?
of course. So, ChatGPT for sure. Everybody
Yeah.
using it. Let's be honest, right? I would say that from the last 4 5 months, I have been deeply involved, and I have also been taking some, let's say, Maven courses on how to incorporate AI more into my frameworks. So, for example, Replit, that's the name, right? Tell
Yeah.
me if my
Yeah.
namings are wrong, but Replit is one of the tools which provides you MVPs, right? It can create
Yeah.
MVPs if given a particular framework of PRD or something, right? So that is something which I have used very recently in creating a framework, in creating a prototype. And the reason we used was that we had a crunch of resource because there were not designers available for one of the important tasks, and I kind of had to do it. So I thought, why not use AI? And it was good in giving the first set of ideas on how a particular prototype, let's say if given a problem statement and if given a little bit of wireframe, how a prototype can be built. So that is one of the things which I used. Then ChatGPT is second. Then I have also used, I'm forgetting the name here, but I have also used a tool which helps you in creating PRDs. If given a proper problem statement and all the user research, it helps you creating the PRD. But now it's not on the top of my mind. The name is not on the
Napkin?
top of my mind. I'm sorry?
Napkin?
Not
No,
napkin,
not
but
that.
do you
No.
have any other name
No.
which is very
Miro?
similar to napkin?
Miro itself has an own AI on its, but yeah.
Yes. So now I was coming to that other point. On
Yeah.
top of it, there are a lot of AI, let's say, within the tools, which I also use. For example, Figma, Miro, which has its AI templates, which I use day to day to make my workshop easier. For example, I'm planning to conduct a workshop where I wanted a framework, and there are a lot of these templates which I'm using, which makes my life easier, right? I don't have to think about, okay, how do I plan this 60 minutes workshop? This template and this AI can already help me in doing that for me. So those things are really helpful. But as I said, I'm still a beginner, I'm still a learner. But yes, I have been actively trying to use it for making my PRDs, making some workshop requests on how to conduct it, and also building prototypes. But then
So,
I have to ask you a question because,
sure.
like let's say it's a conversation here. What
Yeah.
type of tools do you use in your work? Because you are also a product manager or a product owner. What are you
Yeah.
using these days? Maybe you can tell me about it.
So, yeah, I think ChatGPT was one thing that we started, I think, as a team, like, in our own, ex company that I think I was in Spain at that time, I guess, when ChatGPT started
True.
booming with our CTO also was very eager to use ChatGPT. Then only I started to know, all right, ChatGPT is a big thing. And that became a day-to-day Google for me. But after that, thought like Claude was more intricate and started giving me very deep answers and everything. And then I would say like Notion, right? Like a Confluence kind of thing that we started using. I think it has its own great AI, which it uses the same kind of things like TRD and all the other things. And
Right.
I guess for other things like, personal uses like researching and this thing, I don't want to give specifics so that will be recommendation. I started using Perplexity, and I was very happy when I started to know that it was found by an Indian as well. And yeah, these are some of the things that I started using it. But I have to use more intricate ones, like as you said, like Replit, and I'm yet to start on those things. But
Mhm.
hopefully, I'll get there.
Of course, of course. See, it's a process, right? There are some people who are actually much faster, but then they are also very kind enough to share their learnings. So I'm also in the learning phase where I'm learning from experts on how they use it and how I incorporate it. But thank you for sharing your ideas. I think I'm going to try out some of these for sure.
So, on Sherry, like, so everybody asks, right? Like, if you're a global product manager, especially Indian in Europe, so what do you see about the job market there for product managers? If you're an Indian want to work in Spain or any other places in Europe, what is the advice that you,
Mhm.
you would give?
Okay. I would say that there is a market definitely, correct? But I would also say that because of a lot of outflux which happened from Asia to Europe, right? And also because of a lot of economic uncertainties which happened in 23, 24, lot of external other factors which were around wars and all, right? Market right now is a little stagnant, right? But having said that, I can tell you that when I was looking out and market was very ripe, getting a job was competitive. I will not say it was easy, but still, if you have certain skills which are really, really needed for a particular type of job, they were open to hiring people from outside also. But now, coming to your question, that if someone wants to move now, what's the, let's say, a path, right? There is no set path, let's be honest here, right? It's a very honest and not a very, let's say, hopeful answer which someone wants to hear at this point of time, because I know a lot of people want to move abroad or, let's say, experience that experience which someone has. I would say that internal shift is one of the good ways that you internally shift in your company. That's one of the very good ways to explore the opportunity. And the other good way could be that you have a very, very specific skill set, which, let's
Mhm.
say, is needed in some market. That could be another very good way of moving. For example, not naming anyone, but I have a friend who's a very good data scientist. So it was very easy for him to find a job last year because he had exceptionally good data skills of building models, right? And one of the startups needed it. So there is a work which is required where you will have to shortlist, see those skills, and if you have it, you apply for the role. So it's a little bit of work, but yes, there is definitely opportunities.
Awesome. That's good to know, actually. So,
Yes, of
many
course.
people also want to experience the Shenzhen life. So, I don't know how
Yes.
it's pronounced. Sorry, Shenzhen or Shenzhen. Yeah.
No, you're right. It's
So, Shari, my final question is, I wanted to know, have you had any, funny or unexpected cultural moments you've had, while working on products
Mhm.
sorry, not on products, in Spain or Europe?
Okay.
So, because we are Indians, right? Like we tend to have those kind of things.
Of course we do. I can start with the very first day. Okay. So when I just came to Barcelona, I worked for this startup and I was working in analytics and product. So my role, it was more like a very short term role, but the role was to set up their matrix platform and set up their data for mobile application and their website. Okay. Just understanding how the customer journey is and setting up the matrix for that. The very first day I go and I see the HR in cafeteria, right? I say hi or I just pass a smile. And then I go down to my place. I was looking for a document. Like basically, I wanted to ask her of one of the documents, a legal document. So I just write a message to her that, hey, do you have any information on that document? And the answer I get is, Sherry, this is a very rude way of asking. You should first say good morning, how are you, how do you do, and then come with the question. Now, in my mind, I was like, but I just met you upstairs in the cafeteria and said hi. Why do I have to do it in the chat? But this is true that it is appreciated here, right? Because in India, we just have this, at least where I come from. Maybe it's not the same in every culture, but in India, you will just say hi and you just straight away get to the point, okay, that you need this. At least that is how I have worked. So it was like the very first day, a culture shock for me that, hey, you have to ask them some questions and then get to your point, right? So that was the first experience, which was very funny. And to be honest, that experience is not just in work. Even when you go to buy a coffee or you go to a restaurant, you cannot just go and say, hey, can I have a cup of coffee? No, you first go, say good morning, how are you? And then ask for a cup of coffee. So it's like I have, kind of remembered these three words, bon dia, ke tal, and then asking for a cup of coffee. So it's like it's considered very rude. Like initially, I was considered as a very rude person. So I had to tone it down to, bring it to the level where I can really fit into the culture and work. But still, I feel there are sometimes when I don't get it straight. For example, recently, one of the stakeholders, I wanted to discuss something, and I just happened to mention to the stakeholder that, I don't think this really makes sense. I will need more information on this. And this directness was actually considered very rude, and the stakeholder felt really upset about it. So there are these subtleties which you have to take care of, especially here, that whenever you are talking to someone, you cannot be very, very direct. You have to like mold your words around in a way that you bring the point, but at the same time, you are not very direct. So yeah, good to know that.
That's very good to know that actually. I think I might survive that then. Yeah. I'm not a very dark
That's a
person,
very
but
good point, because then
yeah.
the opposite what happens is that whenever I come back to India and I travel, I'm considered to be the sweet person on the planet, and I feel, why are people being so rude? So so it happens the other way also, that when I go to North in Delhi and I go to these
Yeah.
jobs, earlier I was used to, right, being direct, cutting the lines, and I'm like, why are people being so rude? But then, you have to switch between the two things. So it works both ways.
But yeah, it was awesome. And yeah, let's
Yeah.
not start a North versus South, something
No,
like
no,
that we
no, of
always
course,
have.
no. But I do have a question to you,
Yeah.
because I know that you have also worked with multiple stakeholders across borders, across regions, across different people. Do you have any such funny experience to share from India?
So when I was working with a lot of stakeholders, right, like especially on my previous company, they
Hmm.
had some kind of direct people. I don't want to mention the geographical location of it, not Spain, of
Of course.
course, but the people where they came from, they were very direct and it was very blunt in the sense it's like they would laughingly tell you that you're wrong in a way that it insults you and compliments you at the same time. And you are left wondering as to whether they like shouted at you, did they compliment you, or what did they do with you in the first place? So that kind of different kind of vibes I had like when I was working with that kind of European geographical place. But they were very nice people. They just were very direct at times, and which we're not used to. Also in some parts of India, yes, they are direct, but they don't say like, "Hey, you're doing it wrong," like that. Or they just say like, "Hey, you could have done it better," or something like that. So yeah,
Okay, so now this is interesting, right? Because my work experience in India was a mix between very high pressure startups
Hmm.
and the companies like, the big corporates. And I
Yeah,
remember, because my initial experience was with startups, I was very used to with this directness. Like people will just say, like the no strings attached, right? They will just say, get on to your work. So when I worked in the same geographical location, because I know which geographical location you're talking about, I did not
yeah,
feel that way, right?
yeah,
They
yeah,
were
yeah,
direct. It was for a minute a shock for me, but then I got into that mode that, okay,
yeah.
this is the mode I have to follow. So this is very interesting that our personal experiences, more than culture, the personal experience you had at work also plays a big factor here, right? Because that's how you were
That's true.
shaped. That's a very interesting. insight which you gave me. The things which you found you were not direct, you found directness. I was like, I am direct, and I found like I have to be non-direct. So yeah,
But yeah, but I think when you're working in India, right, like you're working with the different sets of cultures in itself, and I think we
correct,
gave a lot of people of knowing what it is to work in Europe. I
correct,
think the different culture mindset like yours and mine, I think it really gives them a great idea of the
true,
culture that they can expect in Europe.
true, very true,
Yeah.
very very true. Yes.
And yeah, shockingly, we've come to our end. And thank you, Sherry. It was really great time we had. We got to know the product landscape, product trends, and cultural landscape, and also all the funny vibes that we had, and working in Europe and everything. So, but it was great to have you, and we hope to have you back again.
Thank you so much, Ashwin, for inviting me, and all the very best for your future episodes too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherry.